us, the really cool thing was the data set. Up until that point, there was no realistic color map of the globe anywhere.
So the land layer here comes from
the moderate resolution imaging spectroradiometer aboard Terra.
And the tricky part here was the weather.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it's a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it has to be.
Then
there was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command-Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it.
So, proof that the Earth is a globe is a bunch of photoshopped images? Why can we not make a normal photo from one of those many satellites? If you look at a few pictures the other space agencies released, you will find out they all make composite images. Maybe.
Hi folks, hope you're okay today. I just want to talk about the Earth is flat brigade. There are people out there who are advocating that the world is flat. And it seems to be spreading all over the place amongst creationists. And I want to give my view on the topic. So let's just hear a few more bits on this issue. The Earth is flat. So let's just hear. This is a video called Flat Earth Proof Summary, full background, NASA footage of moon landing. Just hear a little bit more.
You're thinking you can't use a normal camera in space, but the Chinese claim they use the HD camera. And then there is this next problem.
You don't really care much about sea level. You want to be high, you're measuring your distance from the center of the Earth. From the very center. Is that different from the center?
I'm trying to
get the very center of the Earth. So you want to find the farthest point from that center. And it turns out sea level at the equator is farther away from the center of the Earth than sea level near the pole. It has nothing to do with global warming and melting of the ice caps. Why is that? Because Earth, we know it spins once a day. Yes, thank you. 3 people know that it one a day last year.
Good for row number 2. They're off to a great start.
So you spin, when you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out. It gets wider in the middle. So Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning. And it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the pole. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate. And officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator. A little chubbier. A little chubbier. Yeah, chubby's a good word. It's like pear-shaped. So it turns out the pear-shapedness is bigger than the height of Mount Everest above sea level.
So NASA has been showing us those perfect spheres, but now scientists say the Earth is pear-shaped. Let's just try to prove its roundness for now. Everyone has seen pictures like this. These were taken by amateurs. This proves that we live on a globe, right? Well, no, there's another big problem here. Most cameras are using a wide angle or a fisheye lens. These lenses distort the image like you can see in this video. So when you see a curved horizon in the picture, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like that in reality. There are lots of videos from planes and weather balloons on the internet. Every time you see curvature, it appears to be because of the lens. There is a lot of footage that shows no curvature at more than 100,000 feet. Don't panic yet. There are other ways to prove the Earth is a globe. For example, the Medford level experiment.
The argument, for all practical purposes, came to an end when the Church of England was established by law during the 16th century. They rejected many laws of the ancient Catholic Church, and to appear forward-thinking, they embraced many radical scientific notions prevalent at the time, including Copernicus' round Earth theory. With this endorsement, the theory found its way into the schools, which were then largely controlled by the Church. It has remained there to this day, and many children have accepted it without question. Perhaps the most significant experiments were those carried out on a canal known as the Old Bedford Level. Located in Cambridgeshire, England, the canal is perfectly straight over an uninterrupted 6-mile stretch. While there, Parallax conducted many experiments, all towards one conclusion: to prove that the surface of the water in the canal was indeed perfectly flat. In one experiment, a boat carrying a flag rowed from one bridge to another 6 miles away. An observer with a telescope placed 8 inches above the surface of the water found that the flag and the boat were distinctly visible throughout the entire distance. If the Earth is a sphere with a circumference of 25,000 miles, then over a distance of 6 miles, the second bridge should mathematically be 16 feet below the observer's eye line.
Many people have repeated this experiment and are getting the same results. This experiment was done by Matrix Decode. Subscribe to his channel, he made great videos about the flat Earth. Okay, you can start to panic just a little bit now, but still, the Earth must be a globe. We even know the size. Eratosthenes was the first person to measure the circumference of the Earth. He did this by sticking 2 poles in the ground in 2 different locations far apart. By measuring the different shadows, he could calculate the size of the Earth. Many people tell me this is another proof that the Earth is a globe. But in order for this to be proved, we have to assume that the size and the distance to the Sun is correct. If you move the Sun much closer, you will get the same results on a flat Earth.
2,000 years ago, an Egyptian scholar by the name of Eratosthenes performed an experiment that he claimed proved the Earth to be a sphere. However, there are serious doubts about the accuracy of his data and his scientific procedures. Dr. Leo Ferrari explains.
The Eratosthenes experiment is an experiment supposedly conducted in the 1st century, whereby this ingenious person was supposed to have proved, I say that in quotes, that the Earth was a sphere of some 4,000 miles radius. Eratosthenes one day noticed that the Sun was directly overhead in Syene, whereas he noticed that on the same day, at the same time, the Sun made an angle of 7.2 degrees to the vertical at Alexandria, which was some 530 miles away. How did Eratosthenes in the 1st century know what the Sun was doing on the same day in 2 places which are 530 miles apart? One can take all those same data, knowing that the Earth is flat. In one place you have the Sun directly overhead, and at another place, at the same time, 530 miles away, let us suppose that it does make an angle of 7.2 degrees vertical. Then we have a right-angled triangle, which can be easily shown the Sun is some 4,000 miles up in the sky. These superficial, even, considerations show that it's impossible. The whole thing, it's a story, a fairy story made up and mindlessly repeated in textbooks.
If we really live on a globe, how come it's so difficult to prove it? If there are really thousands of satellites in space, and how come there are only a few pictures showing the globe? Oh wait, I said satellites. That's what GPS uses, and it works. Does that prove the Earth is a spinning ball in space? Not for me. If the Earth would be flat, there would be no need for satellites. Without curvature, a ground antenna would have a much bigger range. It would also be much more cost efficient to use ground-based towers. Think about it. If we can make GPS work with only a few satellites, how come they place cell phone towers all over the world? Good.
So scriptures, Isaiah 40 verse 22, it is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are grasshoppers, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them as tents. Dwell in. Job 26:10, he that compassed the waters with bounds until the day and night come to an end. Proverbs 8:27, when he prepared the heavens I was there, and he set a compass upon the face of the depths. Key word there, the Hebrew word is CHUWG. Isaiah 29:3, and I will camp against thee round about, and will lay siege against thee with a mount, and I will raise forts against thee. One writer in Tectonic says, obviously the soldiers could not camp in the shape of a sphere around the city. This word appears to be making a statement about a circular pattern rather than giving reference to a given shape. In Ezekiel, it is actually used in 24:5 to refer to something being burned, probably inside a circle of wood or heap of wood. Skeptics would surely find no satisfaction in the use of this word to refer to the earth and assume that it meant circle, as they do with CHUWG, for it is clear that it is not used exclusively of a sphere, and one can readily suppose skeptics simply assume that someone using the word DUWR to describe the earth meant something like the way it used in Isaiah 29:3. So he goes into the Hebrew. See what he said. This is a tectonics.org earth shape. JP Holding makes a statement. It must be admitted that outright that some of the items listed here could be interpreted as giving a false cosmology, but it is also possible to interpret them in other ways. The Bible lacks specifics in this regard, i.e. precise descriptions that were often offered up by the pagans, and so leaves the answer, does the Bible teach bad cosmology, quite ambiguous in a few places, but for the majority of the sites we have seen, there is no such ambiguity, merely misinterpretation by skeptics and or poetry. We are justified in our assertion that there is no proof that the Bible teaches false cosmology. In other words, we can take scripture, like if we turn to a few scriptures here, Revelation 6:13, and the stars of the heaven fell on the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her ultimate fig, she is shaken. Matthew 24:29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. So there's lots of references to the spheres, the heavens. The earth, Joel 2:10, the earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. So, in other words, the skeptic might say, oh, well, the Bible teaches a flat earth. I would say that is, let's see what he has to say here.
What's going on? I don't know, but I don't like that scary music. Wait a minute.
Curious. There are funny atheist earthlings who insist that this is what the Bible teaches. Let us examine their claims.
Who is that lady?
Strong Concordance, word H77, Eretz, land.
Consider how word number 776 is used. It sometimes refers to some specific nation or territory.
Genesis
It also
2:11,
sometimes refers
Genesis
to some small
23:15,
part of land.
Eretz.
And here is the third sense, where many think word number 776 means the whole planet Earth. That is where you humans go wrong.
With only a few possible exceptions, Eretz never refers to the whole biosphere of the Earth, land, air, sea together. Instead, it couldn't, since the name Earth was not used for our planet until much later. Rather, it refers only to what we might call dry land.
Consider the phrase ends of the earth. Most depictions of ancient cosmology you will see on funny atheist earthly websites look like this. They say the Hebrews conceived of the earth as a flat disk, with the land in the middle and ringed by water. But consider the phrase ends of the earth again after reading word number 776 as meaning dry land.
The Old Testament distinguishes between the dry land, Yabasaha, Eretz, and the watery seas. This is contrary to a modern biosphere sense of the earth. And if that is so, then the end of the earth, Eretz, does not mean the flat edge or disco plateau, but either a shoreline or else some natural or political boundary called a
Now let
contact.
us consider places where the Bible speaks of the ends of the earth.
Deuteronomy 13:6 and 7. Deuteronomy 28:69. Deuteronomy 28:99. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth. This was fulfilled by the nation, the Assyrian and Babylonian. Deuteronomy 33:17. His glory is like the firsting of his bullock, and his horns are the horns of a unicorn within. So this is part of a series of promises to Israel that they will prosper as a nation. 1 Samuel 2:10. The Lord shall judge the end of the earth. Psalm 22:27. Job 28:29. For he looketh to the end of the earth and seeth under the whole. So we've looked at a few there. What he's doing there, that's JP Holding, is skeptics will say, well, wait a minute. The Bible teaches that the earth is flat. And what JP Holding there was doing is showing we take these texts and then we misconstrue them when it talks about the end of the earth. It's not actually talking about a flat earth. We're imposing our hermeneutics on that rather than actually looking at the text in the context. Okay. So, what do I think ultimately of all this end of the earth? I think it's utter baloney. I think it's all conspiracy theory stuff that the earth is flat. And I can't really take it seriously. And I think it does damage to the cause of Christ, because people hear this kind of stuff and they think immediately that you're anti-intellectual and that you're not really actually living in the real world. So I think it's dangerous. I think it kind of undermines the preaching of the gospel, because you're preaching the gospel and then you say you believe in the flat earth, then people are just not going to listen to you or take you seriously, because you're just following stuff that isn't even science. It's just pseudoscience. And people might say, well, they have a point, but to be honest, I just think that it's crazy stuff, really, and I think that it undermines the credibility of the preaching of the gospel if we say that we believe in the flat earth. All these things that are brought up, all these arguments for a flat earth, to me, it's just pseudo stuff, pseudoscience, based on, when it was talking about these videos and the skyline changes with the camera. That's not science. That's just pseudo conspiracy theory stuff, and I just can't take it seriously. And I would just ask people, to really, I think, just to think things through and think that if you kind of imbibe this kind of stuff, then you're going to undermine the preaching of the gospel. It seems to be some creationists that are following this kind of stuff. And you're undermining creationism, you're undermining the preaching of the gospel with this kind of stuff. Skeptics are not going to take you seriously if you're propagating this stuff. You're not going to be taken seriously on the streets. To be honest, there are some things to argue for. And there's some things that are just a waste of time, and I can't even be bothered to look into it, because it's a waste of time. It's a complete, utter waste of time. And if you're going to listen to this kind of stuff, then you're going to be taken in by other stuff that might be even a million times worse. So you've got to be discerning. And Paul talks about fables and science so-called, and you can get yourself wrapped up into this pseudo-science and pseudo stuff that's not grounded in reality. It's not grounded in reality. It's not grounded in the Bible. It's not grounded in sound teaching. It's all it's going to do is cause arguments amongst Christians about this. It's going to make Christians look stupid, and it's just going to retard the whole Christian proclamation of the gospel if you imbibe this kind of stuff. I say this with the greatest respect. There are brothers that I know that have imbibed this kind of stuff, and I love them to bits. I respect them, but you're very unwise if you're following this kind of stuff. When you say, oh, well, there's this argument or that argument, I'm speechless. I'm just speechless that you could even begin to think like these things, I'm just speechless. I'm just speechless that anybody could even think that the earth is flat. It boggles the mind how anybody could even imbibe that. And I think a lot of people will apostatize, will leave Christianity. A lot of young people, a lot of thinking people will be absolutely discouraged in their faith and in their walk with God. I mean, if they know God, they won't leave. If they're called of God and saved, they won't completely leave. But there'll be a lot of people who may be interested, who will come into church, who will fall away because they realize that this is just not, that they'll realize that Christians are just anti-intellectual and just fools for believing anything. So it's really important that you do your research, do your study, and not be listening to these kind of conspiracy theories. And really, it shows you how anybody can be hoodwinked, that people can bring up arguments that seem plausible and take a lot of people in, and people can be gullible. But you have to have a mind that thinks. And if you think about it, it doesn't make sense at all. So I mean, the pictures that we see of stars, are they all flat, or don't they exist? Or you're going to ask silly questions like that, which just make you look silly. It's just silliness, So please, if you're a Christian today, please think. Don't believe in these conspiracy theories. It's just false science. I don't agree with evolution. I think evolution's a load of baloney. I think that is pseudoscience. But there's basic scientific things that we do know, and to try and overturn those things and say that they don't exist and that it's not true, it's just sheer lunacy, really. That's what I think it is. It's just lunacy. And you've got to really think about what you're doing. I say this with the greatest respect and love to my brothers and sisters in Christ. But what you're doing is you're actually falling into the trap of the enemy, and you're actually undermining the preaching of the gospel. Because if you bring this stuff up on the streets that the earth is flat, people are just going to laugh at you, and they're not going to listen to the gospel. You undermine people like myself who are trying to preach the gospel, who are trying to reach out, because we'll be associated with people who believe in the flat earth or things like that. So I'm asking you to think about this, to really think. I say this with the greatest respect, because there's some dear brothers that I really respect and really love. Please think about this. This is not good. It really isn't. It really isn't good. That's all I've got to say. I can't even be bothered to go into the studying science and all the rest of it. I just can't be bothered, because it's just a waste of time. If you're going to believe this kind of stuff, then you're going to get taken in with even more dangerous things that are going to just pull you away from the truth. You've got to stay solid in the faith, stay solid in the Word of God, stay solid in Christ. And Christ is not anti-intellectual. Christ was not against you using your brain or thinking things through. and you're not thinking things through or using your brain, if you're saying the earth is flat, what you're doing is you're believing in conspiracies, and then by believing in them, you bring in the gospel into disrepute, because people are just going to think that Christians are stupid, and they're not even going to listen to us because of this kind of stuff. That's what I think. Anyway. So I find it extremely disheartening and discouraging that within Christian ranks, within the ranks of evangelicals, Christian people, that some people can be imbibing this kind of stuff. It staggers belief. You know, people like Francis Schaeffer, Van Til, Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones, F.F. Bruce, these are scholars. These are great scholars, great minds who for importance of thinking. B.B. Warfield, Herman Bavinck. Great minds. They were not people who were anti-intellectual or imbibed things that were just without really thinking about it. I mean, they weren't perfect. B.B. Warfield wasn't perfect, but they wouldn't have imbibed, you know, the great heritage there of great thinkers. And the Apostle Paul said, "Send me the parchments." He was a man who believed in studying. He was not anti-intellectual, and if you're following this kind of stuff, you're portraying Christianity as conspiracy theories and anti-intellectual, and it will undermine the cause of Christ, especially in the university campuses. It will undermine the gospel, and that we will have to make videos or try to cancel people out of this stuff is just going to be a waste of time, a waste of energy, when we could have been using it doing other stuff. So anyhow, I'll make a video in a few weeks' time going into the actual arguments of these flat earthers, and I'll give some arguments against what they're saying. And for the moment, I'm just staggered and shocked, and just to say, please think about what you're doing. It's not good. It is not good. All right, take care and God bless.